Assalamualaikum and hello everyone. My name is Shanzi Ahmed and I will be your host for this session. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you for GenMo's first panel discussion where we will talk about delivering effective financial education, key lessons for Pakistan. Pakistan currently has the largest population of youth ever recorded in its history, with over 100 million individuals under the age of 18. This provides a tremendous opportunity for us to change the course of our economic future by empowering our youth with the financial education and capability. Our esteemed panelists, who are financial literacy and youth education experts, will share their own experiences with working both globally and locally with the youth to help us understand how Pakistan should navigate effective delivery of youth financial education. At GenMo, we are on a mission to increase financial literacy and inclusion for millions of Pakistani kids and teens, and provide an opportunity for families to understand and interact with money together. To help us navigate with this discussion, we have an impressive group of panelists that I would now like to introduce to all of you. Starting with Dr. Olena Trygub, the Principal Expert at Strategy and Development Department at the National Bank of Ukraine. Ms. Ayesha Zaheer, the CEO of Junior Achievement Pakistan. Ms. Sophie Paine, a financial education designer and trainer and the founder of A plus B equals 3. And lastly, Mr. Ahmed Ali Shah, the founder of Spadmatic, a training and development organization focused on education. This session will also be moderated by our CEO, Mr. Mohsen Siddiqui. Let's give them a warm virtual applause. Okay. And so before I hand over our discussion to our moderator, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker for the session, Professor Adele Atkinson, who is a seasoned financial education expert and policy influencer with over 10 years in the OECD as the head of financial education and currently serving as a professor of practice in financial literacy and well-being at the University of Birmingham, UK. We are so honored to have her share experience and insights through a video message, which will be invaluable for all the audiences and a perfect way to begin this discussion.
Hello, everybody. My name's Adele Atkinson. I'm a professor of practice in financial literacy and well-being at the University of Birmingham in the UK. Prior to that, I worked as the head of financial education at the OECD, or the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development. So as you can see, I've been working on financial education and financial literacy for a very long time. And I was delighted to be invited to speak at this event. I'm really sorry I can't be there in person or join you in real time, but family commitments meant that a video recording was all I could achieve this time in the time available. Even so, it's an honour to be able to talk to you a little bit about my knowledge of financial literacy and maybe spark some ideas for you as you move forward in Pakistan, or if you're listening to this from elsewhere as you work on financial literacy. So let me start just by saying I'm using this term financial literacy, and I recognise that the conference is about financial capability. I'm doing that because I've worked at the OECD for a long time, where the definition of financial literacy is actually very broad. So I'm not talking about financial knowledge alone, although I do think that's very important. Really, I'm using the term financial literacy to include knowledge, attitudes, behaviour, and maybe even skills and other aspects of managing your money that could be incorporated in an overall measure. And really, the purpose of looking at financial literacy is to be able to help people to maximise their financial well-being. So this has actually been on the policy agenda in various countries for a very long time. I started working on it in the UK in 2005, I believe. So really, there's been interest in this before the global financial crisis. But the interest itself has changed over time. And one of the things that's quite noticeable is how relevant it continues to be. Despite all the efforts that have been made, despite all the policy guidance that's available, we see that people still struggle. They struggle with their financial well-being. They struggle with access to financial products in some cases. So the topic is still relevant, but at the same time, we know more than we ever did. The OECD started working on this topic in 2005-06 as well, and by 2008 they'd created a network. So many countries come together through that, and similarly through AFI there are many countries coming together. And various other organisations also try to create an opportunity for different organisations to learn from one another and pick up on best practices. I hope very much that this is an opportunity for you to do that today. I recognise that the focus of this conference is particularly on youth, and that's no surprise. Really, everything that we know about financial literacy suggests that you need to start young. Typically, governments are encouraged to develop a national strategy for financial literacy, and I see that you have a national strategy that's focused specifically on youth, so that's great news. And when governments do start to think about that national strategy, one of the most important things is to actually bring stakeholders together, to learn from them, to see whether they are all targeting exactly the same group or whether they're doing something different, to make sure that the materials and the way that they're talking is aligned with good practices and consistent messages are being shared, because what you don't want is for young people or any other group within your population to hear a message from one stakeholder and then hear it contradicted from another. And you also don't want a message to point them in the direction of a financial product that may not be suitable for them if you know more about their actual situation. So those are some of the benefits of bringing stakeholders together at an early stage. A national strategy also typically talks about the people within a population that are going to be targeted first and the reasons for targeting them first. So often you hear about targeting youth, and there are several reasons for that. I'm sure, as you know, in Pakistan, one of them is that there are lots of youth. This is not always the case. Some countries are really aging. But another benefit of targeting youth is that you capture their imagination before they've had the experience. So you can help them to think about their future. You can help them to shape their behaviours before they become problem behaviours. And really, again, as I said, financial literacy for me is so much more than knowledge. Young people do need knowledge. We all need knowledge. And some of that knowledge does change over time as new products, for example, become available, or as new risks become available. That's not really a good word. As some risks become apparent, such as scams, we do need new knowledge, but we also need the skills and the behaviour to back them up. So we see that target groups that are discussed include young people. Sometimes it's people who are in employment or people who are working in the informal economy. We often hear about other particular groups, such as those that are approaching retirement, that might need to make particular plans in order to make sure their retirement goes smoothly. And sometimes those people who are more vulnerable, either because they come from a vulnerable group, such as migrants, perhaps because they've faced significant periods without a household income, and other issues that may have created a particular difficulty in terms of their money management, basically, at a household or individual level. So when we talk about financial literacy for youth or for young people, we can look at it in different ways. Certainly, it's great to be able to reach them through schools. And in countries where they have tried this, it means that they've been able to integrate financial literacy messages into the general curriculum that's used within schools and sometimes across the whole country. So this gives them the opportunity to look at existing topics, subjects such as maths, but also topics within geography or history, potentially, and sometimes other kind of more innovative things, such as looking at food tech, how food is developed and how the costs are shared out and how households manage the issues that they face when they shop. All of those things can also include financial literacy messages. But at the same time, it's also recognised that not all children will have access to financial literacy or financial education in schools. And there are so many other ways of reaching them, either by using the school as a piggyback, basically, so inviting speakers into the school to talk to children, but also potentially looking at other organisations that they are already involved with, which might be sport, or it might be religion, or it might be some kind of particular activity group that they join, or a summer school. There are lots of ways in which children in different countries access things. In some countries, it may be just a local community leader who recognises that there's a way in which they can reach youth when they're out of school, when they're doing other things, and talk to them and give them these financial literacy messages that can help them in the future. There's also a role potentially for digital tools, and I know that's something that a lot of you are going to be interested in. Obviously, it depends on the type of tool that is available to people within each country. So it may be a fairly basic phone, it may be a more complex smartphone, it could be a tablet. There are various different ways in which young people can access digital technology. And once they have that access, it's possible to send them messages that have financial education content. So that might be SMSs. It could be an app that they're using. It could be a complex website that takes them in all kinds of different directions to explore different things. It could be games that have been developed that they can put onto their phone, maybe games that they don't need to use the internet to play with, so that they're playing in a way that encourages them to think about financial issues, to solve problems, and to see perhaps where their behaviours and their attitudes are not necessarily going to lead them to the best outcome. And we often talk about using these things in combination with a real teacher. And that teacher, again, could be a community leader or a parent. But the important thing is to talk to the young person so that they understand what it was that they were learning, that they don't come away and think, oh, I played a game or I read something, without fully understanding what that's trying to impart. So ideally, you would want them to understand that even if they made a mistake in the game, they won't necessarily make that mistake in real life, because now they have the understanding that taking that particular decision at that particular time led to an unpleasant outcome. So that's one way in which some digital tools can be helpful. Another process that I evaluated recently, which turned out to be very efficient at helping young people to learn more and also made changes to their behaviour and attitudes, was to educate them through a video that has music and singing and storylines with cartoon characters. And this is something that can be used in many schools, not all schools yet, because they don't all have access to electricity. But it allows the teacher to sit back while the children watch the story, and then the teacher re-engages with the class and talks them through what they've learned and helps them to bring it back down to their own reality and think about how the decisions that the characters in the cartoons made would play out in their own lives. As I say, the evaluation that I did was really surprising, the amount of change that we saw statistically that could be fairly definitely associated with this class. So obviously with statistics, you're never 100% sure, but we were confident that the changes we were seeing would not have occurred without the children having taken that class. We're doing some more study on that soon. So for those of you that are interested, the class is called Judging, and I will be evaluating that with the control group to have even more confidence in the findings, but that's for a later date. So what else can I talk to you about in terms of digital? I think the other reason that it's really nice to work on digital tools with young people is that you can potentially capture data. And I know that sets off alarm bells, and it should, because when we collect data, we then take the responsibility for that data. So I'm not suggesting that you should have names and addresses. If you don't need it, that would be inappropriate. But to be able to get some high-level data to see the variety of types of understanding that you're seeing, or if you're using websites, the types of websites that encourage young people to stay for a long time and those that really are not particularly engaging and the young person soon goes away, that kind of data can be incredibly useful, and it's something you can't achieve with a book. There is just very little data that you can collect from a book. You can collect the number of sales, and you can potentially, if it's a library, collect the number of times that it's rented out. But once it's in the hands of the young person, there's not much you can do about it. Whereas a digital tool provides you with so much more opportunity to collect data and try to understand the journey of the person that's accessing your tools, whether it's a game or a website. So I think we shouldn't overlook the benefit of being able to collect data, but at the same time, as I've mentioned in passing, collecting data is also potentially a danger. And we need to make sure that young people understand that when they do use digital tools of any sort, and whether they're using them to learn about financial matters or whether they're using them to access financial services, they need to be very aware of how their data is being stored, how it's being used, and whether they are protecting their own data and their own devices properly. And we do see that one of the biggest risks at the moment for people accessing digital tools and digital financial services is the potential for scams, for fraud, and for people having the data stolen. And we shouldn't underestimate how important that is. Even if people only have a very tiny amount of money in a financial product that they're holding online, they need to take complete caution and they need to understand the risks of sharing their password, for example, or leaving their devices unlocked and leaving them on their desk at school, whatever it might be. It's really important that they fully understand that. And that is something that we need to integrate into financial education. And because I can't talk about everything, and I'd like to, and because time is running out, the last thing I wanted to talk about was behaviour change. Because yes, knowledge is important, and yes, it's important that people can look up the information that they need. But there's also plenty of tools that we can use, and especially those delivered digitally, that can help people to actually change their behaviour. And these can work in various ways. So they may work by understanding normal human behaviour and encouraging it. So, for example, we know that people like to be the same as their peers. So if we provide them with a game and we encourage them to work to achieve the same score that their peers achieved, or to save money the same as their peers are achieving, that can really motivate them. And maybe competition comes in as well and they actually want to do better than their peers. But certainly that feeling of belonging and of being the same as everybody else is very important. And we also know that certain messages can encourage and others can discourage. And there's plenty of documents and research about that. So do send me a message afterwards. I'm sure the hosts will share my university email address if that's something that you're interested in, and I can point you in the right direction. So as I say, plenty to talk about, not enough time. I'm going to stop there because I promised no more than 15 minutes. I know it's a long time to listen, but I wish you every success with the conference. I really hope that you're all able to get together and talk and discuss these topics. And I really hope that the next time I'll either be able to join you in person or, if not, at least digitally alive rather than digitally videoed. Thank you very much.
That was so insightful and amazing. I would now like to request our moderator, Mohsen Siddiqui, to take this discussion forward from here.
Thank you, Shanze. It was indeed an extremely insightful message by Professor Atkinson, with so many learnings and inspiration for every individual and organization in Pakistan out there on the front line, working towards enhancing financial literacy and inclusion. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, morning or evening, everyone, wherever you are joining from. It is indeed an absolute honor and pleasure to moderate this session with such amazing experts in financial literacy and youth education. I would actually like to start the discussion with Dr. Olena Trygub, who's a principal expert in the Strategy and Development Department at the National Bank of Ukraine. Dr. Trygub, taking from what Professor Atkinson referred to in her message about the OECD, International Network of Financial Education's crucial role over the years in establishing some of the best practices in this area, based on your own experience being engaged with the network, what are some of the best practices which any country can adopt as a starting point when it comes to youth financial education?
Thank you very much for the question. Hello to everybody. Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon. It's a great pleasure for me too to join this event, this important meeting, and to share maybe some of my experience. Frankly speaking, I totally agree with Professor Adele Atkinson's statements that OECD plays today a very important role in the development of financial literacy all over the world. In Ukraine, the National Bank of Ukraine plays the leader role in the development of financial literacy, and that's why 5 years ago the National Bank joined international network on financial literacy, which was organized by OECD. It's very important to have an opportunity to communicate with colleagues from other state authorities, for example, central banks, ministries of finance, economics, or other organizations, and to get know how they develop financial literacy policy, what target groups they choose, what events they organize, and whether these all actions are efficient, and what we need to improve in the future. Through OECD network, we have an opportunity to meet with each other several times a year, also to participate in different webinars, to read different surveys, important surveys. And for example, when the pandemic began, one of the most important topic became fraud, financial fraud, because everybody became digital, and we began to use digital financial services more. That's why we need to pay more attention to such topics as fraud and financial resilience, because many people lost their job over this period, and also all these issues were at the first place. Also, each year, the National Bank of Ukraine takes part in OECD financial literacy educational campaign, which is called Global Money Week. It's a very important campaign because at the same time in March each year, over 100 countries all over the world join this campaign and provide different financial literacy events, first of all for school children, for youth, for students, and then also communicate. There is a possibility to communicate with the youth from other countries over this campaign and share what actually they organize. Unfortunately, this year, due to war, Ukraine could not have a possibility to organize this campaign, but we believe that in the next years, we certainly will join this campaign. And OECD recommend also not only organize one educational campaign during the year, but also in October, for example, there is a World Savings Day. This is also a nice possibility to pay attention to such topic as financial resilience, savings, deposits, and to communicate with different target groups. And first of all, with the youth. I've read several days ago a nice article about financial temptation. This topic is very actual for young people, because young people don't have enough experience in life. Very often they want to increase their income very quickly. And it's a great problem. That is why we need to pay attention to such things as financial temptation, to explain young people that they should pay attention to their expenses, because very often they look at different influencers like bloggers or stars and want to become so successful as they are. And it's a very important issue. And also I want to mention about some words about financial literacy strategy. For every country that and its state authorities that wants to develop financial literacy on the state level, like financial literacy policy, it's important to create a special document, financial literacy strategy. This is actually an action plan that describes for 3 or 5 years the main actions that state authorities will implement to develop financial literacy of key target groups. In Ukraine, one of the most important target groups is, of course, youth. According to our last survey that took place in 2021, the lowest level of financial literacy is among young people. It's nearly 12 scores out of 21, as it is described according to OECD methodology. And it's far less than the minimum level, nearly 14 points. So in every country, I think that youth is the main target group because this is the future of the country in developing financial literacy.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Trygub. There are some very key learnings and very important aspects that you've highlighted in terms of a generability of applying, financial literacy initiatives across the countries. I mean, not just in one specific country, but specifically when we're targeting youth. I would like to move towards Ms. Sophie Paine now. Ms. Sophie Paine, she has extensive experience of working with youth across the world, empowering them to make better financial decisions through a social enterprise, A plus B equals C. So, Sophie, in your experience of working with youth, what would you suggest should be the age that the society, whether it's the parents or the teachers, should actually begin making children familiar with concepts related to money?
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure listening to the two panels so far. Very, very interesting insights. The good question about the age. When I started, and it's funny because Dr. Atkinson, Professor Atkinson said she started around 2005, and that's more or less when I started as well, when the topic of financial education started being so important. And I was in Hong Kong at the time, and I was teaching in after-school activities young children, starting in primary school, so around 6-7 years old. And very quickly, I realized that kids got it very quickly. They understood that there are some expenses more important than others, that they should be careful, that money was hard to obtain, and we use lots of stories, and they enjoyed that. But there was a limit to what they really implemented, and for two reasons. One reason, they had pocket money, but their pocket money was all for nice things to have, but nothing to do with real expenses, where they really had to decide, to take real decisions. And so in terms of needs and wants, their pocket money was spent on just wants. So they didn't apply what they learned during the courses with their own money. And we used to do series of courses. So maybe they had 10 hours during a school year, but what's 10 hours versus the 24 hours they are with their parents, seeing their parents, going shopping with them, and they learn much more from the behavior of the parents. And I remember one critical moment actually when I thought maybe targeting youth at a young age is not really effective. I was in teaching financial education at the request of parents in a room which was literally stacked with toys. And I thought, well, whatever I can say, obviously they don't apply it, and it's what's the point, really? So I think you can train youth, and you can raising awareness of youth when they start really handling money, so maybe when they're in their teens. So that's one thing. And parents definitely have a very, very important role, because the children, especially at a young age, are going to copy their behavior from what their parents do. So if they see their parents check out their bank account, check their bank statements every month, for example, they will think this is normal, and children tend to think that their parents' behavior is the normal one. That's the norm. So if they see their parents check their bank statements, talk about money between spouses, saying, okay, oh, there's the big expense coming. Do we do it? How can we finance it? All these kinds of discussions. They will learn that you don't just go to a shop and buy something expensive or latest phone or whatever. You just talk about it and acquire your research. And children can be involved on that. Another way of involving children with real decisions is, for example, the back to school expenses. I think many countries, even the families who don't have much money, they have these back to school expenses. And if you involve the children in decision, give them a budget, okay, you've got that much, you got the list from the teachers, what do you do, and quite on the prices. I mean, there are lots of day-to-day exercises you can do with children to involve them in real life decisions. And as they grow older, give them more of the family budget to manage. That's one thing. Then the other thing I wanted to stress is that there's the age, but there's also the content. And I think, and I agree with Prof. Atkinson, that even though we started in 2005, I either can't see much change, because the financial services providers, the banks, have so much imagination in creating products, financial products, which are complicated, and is that I think we need to broaden the scope of financial literacy so that children, and I know that I've been asked that by youth themselves, so they really want to understand the kind of the big picture. What is money? Where does it come from? And there's a big emphasis on how we spend, but where does money come from and how it's created, and to give the youth more critical thinking, so that when they see and I agree with Mrs. Trygub, there's sorry if I don't pronounce your name very well. There's such a desire from many young people to earn money fast, because inequalities are rising. There's inflation. They just don't have enough money to cope with daily life, and there's all these nice things to buy, and we keep hearing on the news that we need to spend, and so that's really the environment that is not which is contradictory with financial education, that we need to give them more of critical thinking and more about the big picture. And I think one topic which is very important is responsibility. It's not just I manage my money, but I'm part of a big flow. My income is going to be someone else's expense. So how do I fit in this big network of financial transactions? How does that impact the environment? We're in a crisis of the environment, and if financial education doesn't include this is a big problem. How my expenses, for example, impact the earth, how by paying a cheaper product, for example, I don't know, I'm going to buy my clothes from Bangladesh, for example, and being in Europe, there's the impact of shipping it to Europe, and probably I'm not going to, because it's cheap, I'm happy, but then there's not a fair price, for a fair wage for the people making them. So all this, for me, is part of financial education. It's how our financial decisions impact others and impact the earth. And I think this is something that youth we can raise awareness of the youth on that, and use the digital to. I mean, they spend a lot of time searching things, looking at YouTube and so on, giving them critical thinking about the information they receive, trying to find the information, compare, making sure that it's a reliable source, and that the email that they receive that they're going to earn lots of money, is that genuine or not? How does it? Where does this money come from? All this, I think, should be included in the in any curriculum, really.
Absolutely, Sophie. I think lots of key points there, and I think one of the biggest aspect that you've covered is the fact that there is this whole social consciousness and responsibility that needs to be built as part of financial education, right? Which is absolutely something that we at GenMo are also experiencing when we interact with a lot of youth and a lot of Gen Z out there in Pakistan. Is the fact that they themselves are very socially aware and very conscious of the environment, and they want it to become a part of every decision that they make in their lives. So whether it's financial or non-financial, or a simple decision of any consumption that they do on a day-to-day basis, that social consciousness is just an underlying thing that they have. So embedding it into the financial education is absolutely something that needs to be done in that respect. I also wanted to ask you, how important do you think is combining the doing aspect with the learning aspect in terms of impacting longer term financial behaviors? Because I understand that you say that the youth generally looks for a broader vision when it comes to money, and not just learning very specifics of, let's say, budgeting or savings or whatever. They just want to understand where all of this is going to take us in the future. So do you think in that respect, just by focusing on classroom-based lessons, we are missing out when we don't give them an opportunity to sort of do something along with it or apply their learnings together?
They need both. They need these kind of big pictures, as I said, but they also need the doing. And in terms of classroom, I think there's tons of opportunities in the schools to give some basic projects to children so that they manage it in terms of also the finance. And it can be running, if there's end of year party, for example, event, it's to give them the responsibility for one part of the budget, for example. So they have to look at the different costs, negotiate. I mean, there are all kinds of skills that are involved in real life example. Or it can be if the school, for example, has a small budget in terms of having books.
Yeah.
Small library in the classroom, for example, they can be children can be responsible for that, and it can start with that's just two examples. But I think by doing, the children will learn, and they also they can learn from them. So they have to work their these budgets, for example, in group. And that's very important because, and that's an issue that you find in many couples, is that they have a different approach to money because they come from different family backgrounds, and some are more lax, others are really, they're more the budgeting part of the couple. And this is important that the children start talking about these differences of appreciations of money. Some don't have really issues, so they're not going to count really penny by penny because that's they come from richer families. But others are really aware that they need to be very, very careful, and one penny is one penny. If the children come from different backgrounds in the school, they can start talking about these differences of approach, and I think that's very important too. So schools, I think schools have they have these two aspects. Definitely the big picture, because there's that's something that schools can talk about and show, and but also these day-to-day small budgets that the children can manage.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sophie. Next, I would like to come towards Ayesha Zaheer, who's serving as the CEO of Junior Achievement Pakistan and has been involved with building and implementing so many youth financial education initiatives for many years in Pakistan. Ayesha, could you please share what kind of engagement tools and initiatives you've seen work well within the Pakistani youth, and how you and the team at Junior Achievement Pakistan have created that localized approach with this, considering that Junior Achievement programs are by and large of global nature in that respect?
Yeah, hi everyone. Very insightful and very fruitful discussion that has been happening. Dr. Adele actually shed light on a lot of important, aspects of financial literacy and inculcating a financially charged behavior. So is Olena and Sophie. Amazing insights that I actually got, and I was actually taking notes on that as well. So a little bit about Junior Achievement. It's this organization was created after World War I. JA worldwide. They were the ones who actually came up with the term skilled workforce and decided to follow three elements: financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and work readiness, to develop that skilled workforce. So now we are 103 years old, working out of 120 countries. So impacting around 10 million students every year. Working with them, we do have globally certified curriculum, courses, experiential learning programs around. So essentially, the programs are between ages 7 till 25. Because the idea is that if you need to inculcate that behavior that we are talking about, and which is extremely important and critical to develop that, financially savvy mindset, you need to start off early. So at ages 7, we mean that the children are around fourth graders or third graders, where we start off with with little games and all that, so they actually have that access, and they can actually plan out the pocket money that they get, what to spend, what to save, and what to donate even. So that's how it actually goes on. What I have seen is that, just like Sophie was saying, that curriculum integration that we really want to do in Pakistan, because a lot of JA member countries have actually done that. They have incorporated these financial literacy and entrepreneurship courses in the national curriculum of those member countries. So that is important. But I presume while we are working with children, whether they are tweens or teens, or even maybe university goers, so it's actually a very delicate balance between awareness and accountability, because you do inculcate that information and knowledge to them, but as long as there is this that flair around reward and recognition, we tend to, it works for every one of us, but I think with children it actually works well. So for that as well, we have two kinds of competitions. One is International Trade Challenge, in which is basically for 11th graders, and it's like a business plan competition that happens on a national level and then on a regional level. So we're part of Asia Pac region, so we do that, and then the winners actually go to the global level. The other one is even more interesting, in which these 11th graders essentially make a company of their own with their cross-functional sort of unified sort of energy coming out, because they have their own HR, they have their own financial department, and even their marketing strategy. And in order to be suitable or to apply for this competition, they have to run the company for at least 3 months. So 11th graders is essentially Cambridge students. Grade 11 is essentially O3 or A1. So the same way it happens nationally, and then regionally, and then globally. So the end of the day, they get the seed money to continue their companies. So I believe if just like when we had a discussion, myself and Mohsen and his wonderful team, so we were talking about the fact that the way they have developed their app in that it's not just instructional or demonstrational. It's basically bite size knowledge packets, and then there is this on every step there is this reward or recognition involved, so that it can keep the interest of that particular child who's actually playing that game. With the post-COVID scenario, we really need to have to smartly develop our courses in order to keep the children's interest alive, and so that they can actually complete that entire process, and in that they can actually have that fulfillment that they just like Mohsen said, that they are very socially aware. So they need to have a sense of purpose, and they need to have that sense of fulfillment once they're done with it. So these are a couple of, I believe that, both the top down and the bottom up approach is actually essential to incorporate that behavior.
So many learnings in that conversation, I think specifically applicable to Pakistan as well. And I think one of the key things that you've highlighted is the fact that the conversation starting from entrepreneurship, right? So a lot of these young children are now looking to sort of make money on their own because they see a lot of young people doing that, right? So the concept of side hustles, part-time work is becoming more and more common. Obviously, because the way the world is now, inflation is so high, cost of living has increased a lot. Every member of the family is trying to pitch in some way or the other. And then you also see these young individuals sort of coming up, taking responsibility and wanting to do more than what they're doing just at school or otherwise, which definitely can be like, a starting point in terms of teaching them about money. Because when you decide to become an entrepreneur, a lot of us can relate to that. It teaches you a lot about money in another way, right? In terms of the cost, in terms of, revenues and other things, which can definitely be a good entry point for these teenagers. So these competitions, absolutely, that you've highlighted, the Junior Achievement Pakistan is doing, both at the local and regional, and then also promoting them at the global level, are definitely a key entry point for these individuals, young ones, to be able to understand money better. So yes, absolutely, I agree with that 100%, and I think that's the way to go. Thank you so much, Ayesha. That was really insightful.
Most welcome. Anytime.
Lastly, I would like to turn to Mr. Ahmed Ali Shah, who is the founder of a training and development organization focused on education and using behavioral insights, especially gamification, to create a positive influence on student learning, and has been patiently listening to the discussion so far. So Ahmed, welcome to the conversation. We would really like to understand what tools and methods in your experience really work when it comes to educating the youth and enhancing their overall learning experiences.
Thank you, Mohsen. Thank you for inviting me here, first of all. It's an honor to be listening to all these individuals who are leading in their own industries. So just to shed a little light on what works and what doesn't work for youth, because we've already stressed on how important financial literacy is for kids. First, we need to actually understand what gamification is, because gamification is a technique or a method or a strategy, whatever you want to call it, which sort of uses behavioral insights from psychology, cognitive science, and social science. What this does is it sort of positively changes the behavior of an individual through feedback. And it is an idea that has been challenging common standard economic theories of a consumer being a rational consumer. As Ms. Paine already discussed, that like our kids are not rational consumers. Even knowing that they need to save, they will not go ahead and and save anything for themselves, because they know that in that moment, whatever pocket money they have, they just want to spend. So coming to gamification and telling you how it sort of works for kids is I'll give you an example of a subway station in the US. What that station has is a set of stairs and a set of escalators. As a rational consumer, we know that the stairs are faster. we also know that the stairs are healthier for us because they burn calories. Yet, no one was taking the stairs at that subway station. What the government did was they placed tactile piano keys on the stairs. And as a result, when people walked up and down the stairs, they would be making and creating their own music. 66% of people, there was a 66% increase in the number of people that were now taking stairs. So gamification, or what works for kids, is basically turning mundane tasks, like mundane, boring, monotonous tasks, and turning them into something which has a game layer added to it. One organization or one company or one application that tried to take gamification global in 2016 was Pokemon Go. The reason why I mentioned Pokemon Go here is because majority of the kids have played this. Gen Z has played it, and even our generation has played it as well. What it actually did for the kids was, otherwise we would have found these kids sitting inside their homes and playing on their mobile phones. But what this game did was it encouraged people to go outdoors, to exercise, and to explore locations that they had never been to, even if they were living in that city since the beginning. So what basically happens is, when you turn anything into an exciting thing, people do it. There are so many apps out there right now. So Nike does it for fitness. There's a app which you can download for your house, which is called Chore Wars, where kids can be given chores and they get points and badges on the chores that they complete. So our brain also has this tendency to turn everything into a game. When we were kids, I'm pretty sure everyone, when they went to grocery shopping with their parents, it's one of the most boring tasks, because all you do is drive that trolley. As a kid, what majority of the kids do in that supermarket is they imagine the whole supermarket to be a racing arena. They imagine themselves as maybe the main character for Fast and Furious 10, and they're now swinging that trolley around the aisles of any supermarket that you take them to. So they just made that thing into a fun thing for themselves. Basically, gamification is an idea which has been worked on extensively, and different levels of gamification have been sort of theorized. The first one is playful design, which I gave you an example of how children imagine things, and even the subway station tactile piano keys is also playful design. There's no reward added to it. And then there comes transactional gamification. This is like a step ahead of the regular gamification process. What happens in transactional gamification is where you get a reward at the end of whatever task you perform. A simple example of this is the Starbucks app. What the Starbucks app does is, every time you buy a coffee from Starbucks, you get a star added onto your app. And at the end of 10 stars, you get a free coffee. Starbucks did a research on this, and they realized that people who were buying 7 to 8 coffees a month had now boosted up, and they were now buying 10 coffees a month just because they wanted that extra free coffee. So this is what gamification is, basically giving sort of like a reward at the end of completing a bunch of tasks. And then there's a final version, or the final two and very complex versions of gamification, which is social gamification and systemic gamification. Basically, in 2010, Swedish rail road safety organization started an idea called the speed camera lottery. What they did in the speed camera lottery is, rather than so basically they were finding the people who were overspeeding, but what they did was, people that were under the speed limit, they put their name in a lottery ticket. So end of the month, they could win a lottery which was paid by those people who were paying for fines, overspeeding fines. And that transformed the driving behavior of many individuals in Sweden. Although the government did not take that project further, but it's a project which can definitely change driving behavior of many individuals. So just to conclude all this, and talking about financial literacy, because we've been talking about that. I just want to give you an example and tell you how this app, GenMo, by giving badges and by giving leaderboards and by giving all these things to children, will help them learn financial literacy without realizing that they're actually learning financial literacy. So an example that I want to give is in, let's say today, or let's say 10 years back, if I ask anyone to memorize the 118 elements on the periodic table and their properties, 90% of the people would say we can't do it. And kids would also say we can't do it because it's too hard. But there is a company who made kids remember 905 names and their properties. And that was Pokemon. 905 Pokemons. Kids remembered all the Pokemons, and they also remembered the little traits, the little powers that those guys had. So at the end of the day, I want to say what GenMo is trying to do is bringing financial literacy through a very gamified experience that the kids are going to get. That is basically speaking the language that the kids speak, because the kids speak game, and we need to be speaking game to actually get across to them. Thank you.
Absolutely, Ahmed. So, I can't think there would be a better way to actually tie up the whole conversation, which is the fact that finding interest. So even though we realize that as adults, the importance of financial education and literacy as a life skill, you also have to put it, because for a 10-year-old or an 11-year-old, that importance means nothing, right? You have to find their areas of interest and try and sort of place yourselves there, rather than expecting them to sort of come and understand where you're coming from. You should actually get into their zone and understand how we can make it interesting for them. Thank you so much, Ahmed. It has been an absolute pleasure to have all of you join us today. I've learned so much, and I'm sure all of our listeners feel the same way. At GenMo, we are absolutely working towards building a platform that empowers millions of young Pakistanis become able to take self-beneficial financial decisions. And this conversation is an absolute great step towards understanding what that task looks like going forward. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. It was a pleasure to host you, and we look forward to stay connected with you, in the future.
Thank you, Mohsen, and best of luck with
Thank you, Mohsen. Thank you so
you.
much, and all the best with the wonderful work that you've started off. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you, Dr. Olena. Thank you, Ayesha.
Thank you. Thank you too.
Good evening. Bye-bye.